on, wake up, everybody. Yes, sir. Wake up, wash your face, brush your teeth, comb your hair. Get out the best clothes you can wear. And as you're getting up, I want you to say this right here.
Well, it's another day, a day that
I decided.
that I will rejoice and be glad. Yeah. I look in the mirror and get it together.
What you gonna do?
I speak over myself. I encourage myself.
Granted.
So easy to worry what will become of the day.
God's given us authority to speak to our day.
This is what you're gonna say.
I decree and declare that I shall have peace no matter what's going
Now,
on.
what happened on yesterday, leave it. Today's a brand new day.
It's a brand new day. Just speak to your day. It's gonna be a good day, great day, better yet a blessed day.
My kind of day. Today. What's it gonna say?
It's gonna be a good day, great day, better yet a
Just
blessed
speak.
day. Speak to your
Today.
day. It's gonna be a good day, great day,
Better yet.
a blessed day.
That's my kind of day. Today. It's gonna be.
It's gonna be a good day, great day, better yet a blessed
Let's have some scripture shower. Proverbs 18:21.
For life is in the power of the tongue. If you love it, you'll eat the fruit thereof.
Matthew 6:33.
Seek first the kingdom of God.
And it's righteousness and all these things be added to you.
Philippians 4:8.
Whatsoever things are true, honest, just, pure, lovely,
Just think on those things.
come and say.
And we all got bills and we all got needs. What?
My God shall supply every one of my needs.
What happened yesterday?
What happened in
Leave it there.
yesterday, just leave it with yesterday. Today is a brand
What
new
you gonna
day.
do?
Speak to your day.
It's gonna be.
It's gonna be a good day, great day, better yet a blessed day.
My kind of day. Today. It's gonna be.
It's gonna be a good day, great day, better yet a blessed
Just
day.
speak.
Speak to your day.
Today.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, Pastor. How are you? You're muted.
I detest the mute button. But how are you? I'm well.
I'm doing well. Hey, they will in just a little while. They are going to come up with a technology that when you start talking, it automatically turns on.
It's already there.
They're
It's
gonna-
already it's there.
That does not surprise me. So I just need to update my laptop, I guess. So hey, St. Mark, that's a clue. St. Mark, y'all need to buy me another laptop. Stacey's laughing. Stacey Knoell's laughing in the background. They need to buy me a St. Mark. I need another laptop.
Big Everett just logged on.
But good evening, folks. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm so excited about tonight's conversation. I think we already have comments. Good evening, Linda Sims. Thank you for tuning in. Linda, reach out to our staff and our leaders and encourage them to come on. I don't want them to miss this conversation. Today is the first day of Black History Month, and I've always celebrated Black History Month. St. Mark has always celebrated Black History Month, but the recognition and celebration of Black History Month means more now than it ever has before for me because of so much that's happening in regards to Black history. And I just want to say this up front, Pastor, that I am really beyond thinking of Black history as just Black history in terms of our country. When I say Black history, I'm talking about American history.
There's no other way to think.
There's no other way to think
There's
of
no other way to think of it.
it. As a matter of fact,
No history, American history without
yes.
Black history.
And once we, hey, Cheryl Wilson. Hello, Donna Johnson. Thank you guys for tuning in. Tag some folks, invite them to come on to the conversation. It is going to be absolutely fantastic tonight. Got three of my favorite people but who happen to also be three of the smartest people I know, who also happen to be three of the most influential people I know, who also happen to be three of the most just absolutely wonderful people I know, along with another person that I think the world of, Pastor Yolanda. So we're so glad to have them on. So reach out and tag some folks. Hello, Nichelle. Thank you, sis. Nichelle, who is our take. Nichelle got this whole thing started, didn't she, Yolanda? Yolanda? I
Yes,
mean,
she-
this whole like being online and all of this. Nichelle, we love you. You got this started when COVID hit. Nichelle started coming up with plans, and I'm like, okay, this is her idea. We'll give it a try, and now I love it. And now I'm glad we're doing it because we've been able to expand our reach as a church family. So thank you, Nichelle, and thank you for tuning in. But Pastor, let's get started. You want to give some instructions for folks who may be on my Facebook page and tell them where to go to make sure that we can see their comments and they can participate.
Well, he just said it. So if you are on Pastor Johnson's personal page, please make your way over to the St. Mark page because we can't see your comments on his page. And we want to make sure that this is interactive. It doesn't actually give you the full punch if you just view. We want to make sure that you're commenting and sharing. And it's not very often that you have three powerhouses in one platform at one time. So we don't want you to miss out. We also want you to take this opportunity, as he said, to like and share, become a virtual evangelist tonight, because there will be a word. I love the way we intertwine the way that we live out Christ in our daily lives into our intellectual beings as well as our economical way of living our lives. Just 360 ways of living a flourishing life. So join us on the State Mark page or on the YouTube page and make sure that you comment.
And Mark Dupree.
I'm not going to go for that.
Hey. Well, I won't. Mark, yeah, you guys can turn your camera because they won't see you until we bring you on screen. But we're so excited. So let's get started. Thank you, Pastor, for those announcements. Let's go ahead and do this too, just in case we're deep in the conversation.
I
Go
do
ahead.
have one other announcement.
Yes.
As you guys are aware, you know that I am passionate about the Red Cross and blood drives. I sit on the
Yes.
board. We are having a blood drive at St. Mark on February 9th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. You can sign up in advance if you need more information. Please feel free to call the church and we'll make sure that you know exactly what you're signing yourself up for. Okay, I'll be quiet and allow you to bring ladies on first after we say hello to Mother Johnson.
We got to say hello to Mom. Hey, Mom. I'm sorry, Londa. You bring Mom's comment on, and then I'll put up because next week, as a matter of fact, guess who will be our featured guest?
You know what? See,
Mom's coming
I'm
on.
standing up and clapping.
Mom's coming on. Mom's coming on. Mark Dupree, that's Mom. And let me tell you, like that's who has the real anointing. I just got, because I'm in the family, I got like one little drop, but she has the anointing. Then all the siblings, they got it, and I just got one little tidbit of it, and then brought it to Kansas and looked for a place that I could come bring that one little drop of anointing. But that's who has the anointing. But Mom will be on with us next Wednesday, and I can't wait. We're going to talk about flourishing in all seasons of life, tell her story. My mom's 82, and she's still creating new ministries and still finding new ways to impact people's lives, to serve people. She is going through the process now, being licensed and trained as a life coach, and she's already gathering clients. She did a stint and just doing her own online stuff. So she's still learning and growing and evolving and sharing her life at the age of 82. My dad just passed back on December 23rd. So our family has been grieving, but life goes on, and now we carry my dad's legacy forward. So St. Mark and all of you that's join with us on Wednesdays, next Wednesday night, join up, come back. Tonight's gonna be powerful. Come back next Wednesday and meet Mom and engage in another great conversation.
I was taking off next week, but you know what? I will be here for Mother Johnson. Yes.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I put that up so I wouldn't have to. I I could convince you to be on here.
Nichelle, I so agree. She doesn't need a license. He gave her the license long time ago. So Pastor Jay is definitely her first client. So we are looking forward to that. Mother Johnson, you didn't see my standing ovation, but I stood up for you. So I'm so excited and looking forward to having you on.
Very funny, Nichelle. Nichelle is hilarious. You got me again, Nichelle. That was brilliant humor. And hey, I own it. I am her first client because I still need lots of coaching.
But
As
see,
you
now
know.
she can have us as clients because we've had to experience you. So now we need her assistance as
So
well.
now, exactly. So everybody I impacted now they got to have coaching. Exactly. Yolanda, that was brilliant. That was exactly. But we have on tonight, first day of Black History Month. More important that we celebrate Black History Month than ever before. And I'm delighted that we have on tonight the director of the African American Affairs for the state of Kansas, Stacey Knoell, Mark McMormick, who's director of strategic communications for Kansas ACLU, and attorney Mark Dupree, who is district attorney for Wyandotte County here in the state of Kansas. Three wonderful, brilliant public intellectuals, justice advocates, great people, and we are so blessed to have you guys on tonight. I can't believe I got the three of you all on one night.
Thanks for the invitation.
All the St. Mark's, if any of St. Mark's administrative leaders are watching, I think I should get a bonus for being able to get these things.
It wasn't even a hard ask. I was like, I'd love to come on.
Vic Everett just lost off again.
Well, good evening, good people. So let's start here. Each one of you, how are you doing? What are you doing? And also just tell folks a little bit. I gave your title and your position in terms of your work, but tell us a little more about what you do and then what you're working on now, and then how are you doing personally? Let's start with Stacey.
Okay, hi. I'm Stacey Knoell. I'm the executive director of the Kansas African American Affairs Commission. And what am I doing now, or how am I doing personally?
Both.
Right. Yeah, both. Well, I think my work right now is focused mainly on the legislative session. I'm sure that that may come up. So there's bills that I'm paying attention to. There's been bills that I've been giving testimony on that have an impact on the Black community. We know that there are bills that have been introduced. Some have hearings, some don't. So I'll be keeping an eye on those and giving testimony. The commission has come up with a set of legislative priorities, so I'll be trying to pay attention to those issues, as well as some that didn't quite make it to our legislative priority list, but still have an impact on the Black community. For example, juvenile fines and fees is one example. There's a couple of bills dealing with voting rights and how ballots are handled. And so, historically in our community, voting rights has been a huge thing. So paying attention to that. And then other things like from the Crown Act, they're going to try again with the Crown Act, or bills dealing with Black maternal health outcomes. So there are some things that are going through the legislature right now that I'm paying attention to.
Wow. And so before we finish tonight, as a matter of fact, Stacey, I want to give you an opportunity to share with folks who they just heard what you just said about the priorities that are on the table for this legislative session and how you engaged in those, for you to share with folks how they can participate in the advocacy process.
Definitely.
Okay,
Definitely.
So we'll do that as well. Absolutely. Well, thank you for being on. Mark McMormick, how are you? Tell folks a little about what you do with ACLU, and then tell them what major project are you working on right now?
Mark McMormick, I'm the Deputy Director of Special Initiatives here at the ACLU of Kansas. I'm also the chair of the Kansas African American Affairs Commission. Stacey's my boss there. So I do what she says if I know what's good for me. And what I'm working on is actually something pretty heavy, and it's coming to the Wichita area on Monday. We are bringing a case with the end in mind to rid the state of Kansas of the death penalty. And what you may not know is that where you live in Kansas is a big determining factor whether or not you get the death penalty. There is a geographic bias. There is, of course, a racial bias. And we're actually bringing a rather novel argument to this as well when it comes to the death qualification and the makeup of a jury. The process tends to discriminate against people of faith. And if you're discriminating against people of faith, you are also discriminating by and large against African American women. So if you're unwilling to vote for death, if you're on one of these juries, you can't participate. That's the part we're going to be challenging there in Wichita. We're bringing this case. There's a great young attorney in our office who's leading our effort, but they will be joined by lawyers from our national office as well. So this is a really big deal, and I think we have a really good shot at this. And if we get into it later, I'll tell you more. But we're trying to pack the courtroom there Monday, February 6th, 9 a.m. at Sedgwick County Courthouse. If you're able, come and join us and lend your voice to this cause.
Wow. And so there again. So Yolanda, as we move to a close, we want to make sure that Stacey shares that information and then gives people instructions about how they can engage in the advocacy process. And then we want to have Mark to repeat that information he just shared, and then have people write it down. So you all, if you just heard that and you want to get that information, be prepared so that at the end we're going to repeat that information and you'll be able to write it down and participate. And we do want you to participate. Let me just say that as a pastor, as a follower of Jesus, more so than being a pastor, as a follower of Jesus, I deeply and passionately believe that I can't say that I authentically love God if I don't care about the people in my community. If I don't care about people who are suffering, people who don't have enough to eat, people who can't get justice, people who are marginalized, people who are depressed, people who are fighting all kinds of mental illness. Part of my following Jesus is the way I live that out is how I love and care for people. So these two people just talked about things, some ways that you can be engaged. And then now we're going to bring on Mark Dupree talk about how he's doing, and he's engaged in that as well at a different level. So all these three people are engaged in this work of trying to bring justice, to live out Micah 6:6-8. What does God require of us? But to love, to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. They are living that out. They committed their lives to that. Mark, how are you? Mark Dupree, how are you? Tell us a little about what you're doing and what major project are you working on right now?
Well, number one, let me start by saying it's always a pleasure and an honor to speak to you and to be on your program. I am humbled to be on the screen with such wonderful folks.
And Mark.
And so having said that, so I'm the Wyandotte County DA, and make sure I show some love for those who are true dots, and there's nobody like the dot, and those who know us and have been around us, we're always excited that we are there. We go, look like Miss Michelle jumped on. The dot is real, and so what are we doing? We're focusing in on making sure that our community is safe and trying to do our part, and not just prosecuting cases and making sure that victims have a voice, but doing our part in preventing crime from happening, which means that we're going to the different schools and we are working with the teachers and the educators, and we are working with our communities and churches and nonprofit organizations and doing our part in trying to prevent crime from happening. And so those are some of the things. One of the major things kind of tagging along with what Stacey said is dealing with Topeka and the wonderful legislature right now. It's a lot of stuff happening, and one of those things that's happening on our end is we are requesting that a public defender's office be placed here in Wyandotte County. I think last time we spoke, we were in the battle to get that passed by the State Board of Indigent Services. That commission voted unanimously to make that happen. So it was a unanimous vote that Wyandotte County needs a public defender's office. We are one of the lowest economically paid, if you will, counties throughout the state, and we are the ones that don't have a public defender's office, which means, going back to what Mark McMormick was talking about, that desperate impact really affects Black, brown, and broke folks in our community, and they don't have that fair representation. Now, it's a little odd that a prosecutor is talking about this, but I look at it in a couple ways. One, as a Black person, I think it's important that we get as much representation as the next person, according to our Constitution. And then number two, as a prosecutor who has now had to try multiple cases over again because of a lack of competent attorneys representing the defendant on the other side, it drains our resources. It's not fiscally responsible, and we're constantly keeping individuals who are indigent, who can't afford an attorney, sitting in jail weeks upon weeks without even seeing an attorney, and thereby losing their jobs, some their families, some custody of their children, all because we don't have, in my opinion, a public defender's office, and people who really don't understand the struggles behind that. So we are fighting right now and pushing in Topeka for them to pass that budget, and hopefully, as a part of the bids budget, we will get a public defender's office here in Wyandotte County. So that's just a snippet of what we're doing here in Wyandotte.
Amazing stuff. This was not on our conversation map, but I want to ask, because so many people they graduate from high school, they go off to college, and they're pondering, what am I going to do with my life? Some people are blessed to know early on what they want to do with their lives, but people are pondering that, and then most people choose something with the goal of, I'm going to make as much money as possible, and so they go to college, they get a degree. In some communities, they don't need that degree to make a bunch of money, but in African American communities, we know that although the average well, I won't get into that in terms of white kids who only have a high school diploma making more than Black folks with college degrees, but we won't. But my point is, the three of you all, and Pastor Yolanda, the four of you all have chosen to spend your life not pursuing money, but pursuing justice for others, pursuing care for others. So I just want real quick, the four of you, and Yolanda, Pastor Yolanda, you as well. What turned it for you? And I think we know from Mark. So Mark, if it's that story, hold that story, Mark. Hold that story. If it's that story we're going to come to, what pushed you in that direction?
Well, I'll jump in. I think in holding that story, I remember having a conversation with my father when I was trying to ultimately decide whether or not I was going to pursue the legal field or not. And my father said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to help as many people as I can." And he said, "What do you mean by that?" I said, "Well, you raised us in the church. I'm a PK. You're always talking about Jesus. I want to reach as many people as I can because Jesus reached as many people as he could." And he says, "Well, at that time, I was trying to, look at possibly opening up my own business." He said, "Well, so let me ask you this question. Will being a lawyer or being your own business owner affect as many people or as many as you can, according to your thought concerning how many people Jesus touched?" And ultimately, the conclusion was Jesus touched everybody. I couldn't touch everybody. However, I knew that the law touched everybody, whether people liked it, loved it, or hated it, whether you're a dog, animal, or cat, or a human being. And so thereby I said, all right, we're going with Jesus. We're going with the law. So there you go.
That's a great story. Wow. Great. Yeah. Anyone, y'all can just jump in.
I'll jump in. I think for me, I have not always been near as active as I am now in my life. And I know for me what happened was the 2016 election.
Wow.
And I've shared this story a lot that after the 2016 election, it literally felt like a light switch got flicked on. That's the only way I can describe it. where a light switch got flicked on. Whereas I, kind of like Mark was saying, I grew up listening to stories, my mom and dad and my uncles and aunts telling stories about what it was like to be Black. I say what it was like to be Black before we were people, like back in the 1940s and 1950s and 1960s. So I always knew very clearly that my life looked the way my life looked because there were people who went before me. And I would joke that, that I wasn't born in the 1940s or the 1840s. And so that maybe God thought I was too weak. So after 2016, the light switch got flicked on and it literally felt like, it's my turn. It's my turn. Like I have a picture of my mom back in the 1960s at a protest at KU. It's a black and white picture, and she's got a sign, holding a sign saying civil rights, not civil wrongs. And so for me, it really felt like me taking my place in the flow of history. Unfortunately, this fight, the struggle, right? It's almost a cliche. Oh, the struggle is real. People will say that if their line's too long at Starbucks, the struggle is real. But the struggle has been going on for hundreds of years before me. I don't know if it's going to go on for hundreds of years after me, but I take very deeply, very seriously that I really believe that God has placed me on this path. Like God said, okay, now this is what you're going to do. And too much has just been God putting things in place. Like if you had told me 5 years ago, 6 years ago, this would be my life, I would not have. There's no way I could have seen this. I couldn't have planned this. I couldn't have plotted it. So I really do feel like this is the way God has helped me to touch a lot of people. And kind of like Mark says, the law touches everybody. Politics touches everybody, whether they like it or not. Those people in Topeka are making laws every day about how we live our lives, and people don't want to talk about it. I've had people deeply sit me down and question my Christianity because of what I'm choosing to do with my life. But I equally as deeply believe that I am on this path because this is where God has placed me. Maybe this is not a path that everyone's meant to walk, but for who I am, God's like, okay, you're going to walk this one. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Awesome.
Oh, wow. Stacey is doing a really good job.
She is. Yes, she is. Yes, she is.
I hadn't even met Dupree, but when I moved up here in 2018, there was a story in the Kansas City Star about his conviction integrity unit. And I immediately thought, I really like this brother. And in the same article, there was someone high up in the police department who had reflexively opposed it. And I thought that said a lot about that person too. But I'm grateful to be here with the two of them. I have two stories. When I was very, very small, my sister is about 15 years older than me. So she was like another mom. And when she went off to college, there was kind of a void in the house. And she used to write us letters. And my mother would sit on the bed. I'd sit on the floor in front of her, kind of wide-eyed. And my mother would read my sister's letters. And I remember thinking, wow, I wish I could write like that someday. And that was my introduction to journalism. My sister's in the hospital right now with some pretty serious heart problems and lung problems. She lives in Atlanta. So I talked to her today. So I'm hoping that these praying people will pray for her and pray for her health to return. I'd really appreciate that. So yeah, she was she won a scholarship to the University of Kansas, the KU School of Journalism, and that's where I went. She was the first journalist I knew, and she is my inspiration. The second one, a second story is about being a senior in high school, doing research for a paper and reading about another journalist named Loretta Schwartz Noble. She wrote a series of stories about homeless people. And there was one particular woman who had lost her home. She was living in an abandoned garage on an old couch. Her weight had crashed from about 150 pounds to 95 pounds in the shadow of the Capitol, where there's all of this, where there's all this wealth. And in the shadow of the Capitol, this woman was struggling to survive. I was so moved by all those stories. That's what I want to do. So it was the connection of, my sister's journalism scholarship to the real purpose of, comforting the afflicted and afflicting the comfortable that came together. By the time I was in high school, I had a sense for what I wanted to do, but I was fairly certain by that time that I was going to be working as a journalist. Now, did I know that most newspapers were going to fold up? No, but it has been a blessing that being able to write and think are transitory skills. A lot of other people appreciate them perhaps more than people in the journalism industry did. So that's where I came from, and that's how I arrived here.
Wow. I want to comment so bad after every story. Y'all are so inspirational. But let me let you finish, Pastor Yolanda, and then I'll come back in and like give my little commentary on all of these.
I'll be real short because I really want to give the
Yeah.
bulk of our time to our guests. But I'm a military brat, and I was born into sacrifice, into service.
Yeah.
So being one of 10 children, wherever my father was sent, whether it was a different country or a different city, wherever we were, he made it our responsibility to get connected and to serve. And in that, we sacrificed friendships. We were always, trying to build new relationships, but wherever we were, he always told us to fly high, fight hard, and win. And you needed to do that for the people that were in the community that you happened to be in at the time. So that's just been a lifelong motto.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to just make sure, have us pay attention to a thread that has run through all of your stories. Mark talked about his dad and a conversation he had with his dad. Stacey tells a story about her mom being involved in the civil rights movement and protest, and a picture of her that inspires her, but that she never thought she would actually engage in that way. But then the 2016 election happens, and the switch flips on. But Mark tells a story about his mom, which is every time he tells that story, it almost brings me to tears, about his mom reading to him letters that his sister had written. Wow. And then Yolanda tells a story about her dad and about being this military brat and how her dad's service impacted her. So I have to pay attention to that and say to our audience that if you're a parent, a grandparent, uncle, aunt, do not underestimate the impact you are having on your nieces, your nephews, and your children. And if you're intentional about it, you can start building the legacy in them right now. I ran across a quote, as a matter of fact, Mark, that said, an inheritance is what you leave for your children. A legacy is what you leave in your children.
Ooh.
And my thing is to leave both an inheritance and a legacy. Leave something for your children, but also leave something in them. And that has happened with the four of you all. And that's why we have these four public servants here tonight in this conversation. I want Mark Dupree to tell a story that's going to launch us deeper towards the Black history issue of the status of Black people in our country today. And I want to say to all of my friends interviewed that are not African-American, that are not Black, thank you for tuning in. We are not promoting an idolatry of Blackness. That is not what we're doing. This is one part of the American story. Black people are part of the American demographic. And because that is our history and context and legacy, then it is only natural that we be concerned about our journey and how can we both empower our own community as well as empower our community in a way that it helps to empower a positive direction for the American story. But Mark, I want to mention this real quick. You mentioned your mom, your book, that the award-winning book, Some Were Kings, Some Were Paupers. You tell an amazing story about your dad, the song that your dad knew that he told you about. Would you just quickly share that? And then I want to turn to Mark Dupree. He's going to tell a story that's going to launch us deeper into our conversation.
My daddy had a lot of restaurants that I used to work in when I was, real small. And he opened one in Gardena, California, but we were downtown in Los Angeles looking for restaurant supplies. And I just remember for the first time in my life, I'd seen people sleeping on the sidewalk. I'd never seen anything like that before. And I think I wrote this in the book, that they just reeked of misery. They just looked terribly, terribly sad. And I remember being afraid of them. And I always thought my dad was the baddest man in the world anyway. So I was real close to him. And he noticed how nervous I was. And he made it a point to recite this, what I thought was a poem, but it's actually a lyric from a 1951 country music song called Men with Broken Hearts. But that first stanza is, some were paupers, some were kings, some were masters of their art. But in their shame, they were all the same, those men with broken hearts. And he said, these are people just who are brokenhearted, Marcus. You don't have to be afraid of them. And so that was really my my introduction to this kind of humanist take that I would have on everything that I wrote. And it always stayed with me. And I thought it made a nice title for the book.
It is. It's a great book. It's a great lead into the book. It's a great story. And then that story of you and your dad, again, another great story of the influence. So Yolanda, let's put Mark Dupree on the screen alone. And Mark, tell the story. Tell the story. And I've already given your story a title. But you tell the story, sir.
I was 14 years old, and I had just, I believe, finished the 9th grade year, and we were starting my sophomore year. And the school told me, says, "Hey, you got good grades, and so because of your good grades at Wyandotte High School, you qualify to go down and shadow someone downtown." And they didn't give me any information on who I was going to shadow. They said I was going downtown, may go to City Hall, may go to the courthouse. Just come Monday morning. We need you to dress up, put on your best clothing, and come on in. And so for me, as a pastor's son, my best clothing was my communion suit. So I threw on my black communion suit, my white shirt, my black top. I made sure my shoes would shine. My daddy always said, your shoes got to be shining. I don't care how cheap they are, make them look brand new. And so I'm pumped up. I go in there and I tell my parents, I said, I don't know where I'm going. I'm going somewhere downtown. So I get into the school, and they tell me, all right, we need you to go stand in front of the school and wait for the big bus to come. It was me and one other young lady, and we sitting out there, and this bus come, and they sent the big old bus, big old yellow school bus, not even a small one, not a car, it's just 2 people. So we get on the bus, and it wasn't any chaperones, it was just us. We get on here, the bus driver say, "Set out," we set out, take off, and we're driving down, and we show up to downtown Kansas City, Kansas, and we pull up to the courthouse. And I don't know about everyone else, but in my family, I was told specifically, you stay away from the police and you stay away from the court. And if you go to either of those places, mama said she gonna have a problem with me. So when this bus driver pulls up to the courthouse and tells Mark Dupree, please get off the bus, my response was, no, sir, I'm not getting off the bus. But my mama said, I can't go to the courthouse. You get off this bus. So I got off the bus and I walked into this courthouse. I had no idea where I was going. As soon as I get inside the courthouse, there was a lady, African-American lady, a little older. She meets me. She said, "You Mark Dupree?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "All right, follow me." I follow her. We go and we get on the elevator. We go up to the 3rd floor, and we're walking, and she introduced herself to me. And I said, "Well, thank you, ma'am." And she says, "We're going to go into this courtroom." I go into this courtroom, and instantly that little piece of comfort that I just found with this middle-aged woman of color who is so kind to me was taken, because I walked into a courtroom and it was full of nothing but white professionals. Everyone in the courtroom were Caucasian. I was immediately in shock. I wasn't afraid of white people. I knew white people, but I was shocked because I was now that 14-year-old black boy standing in a courtroom with a whole bunch of white individuals wearing suits and dresses and briefcases, and I was by myself. And this lady said, "Mr. Dupree, have a seat." I sit down on the back row of the bench, and after I sit down, I'm watching them go to and fro and talking, and then out of nowhere, I hear someone yell, "All rise." When they yell, "All rise," it was like I didn't hear him because what I saw kept me seated. The next thing I saw was an African-American man, short fella with a mini afro, walk up onto the bench. And at this moment, I'm staring and I see all these folks, but then here comes this little bitty black guy onto the bench. And at that point, the bailiff hit the bench and said, stand up. And I stood up there. And at that moment, it hit me. Wow, we're standing for him.
Wow.
And he looks like me.
Wow.
And so that thing that scared me, that I was shocked, that I felt alone, it was crumbled. And after the court hearing was done, he went back behind his bench, and the lady came out and says, Mr. Dupree, the judge wants to see you. And so I walk through these doors and I walk in there, and here he is. I see him, his back is facing me, and I see his robe, and he unzips and he turns around, and his brother had a pair of flip-flops, a t-shirt, blue jeans on. I said, something gotta be wrong. I gotta put on my communion suit. You wear flip-flops. And so that one day experience turned into a 7-year mentor-mentee relationship where he showed me and told me what I can do. It wasn't that I was going to be a criminal, I was going to be a thug or a gangster, but I hadn't had a judge, a lawyer, a senator in my family. I had preachers, but I didn't have that. And he showed me that as an African-American man, that I too could be a part of the criminal justice system in a positive way. And it was because of that mentorship that I then went on to the University of Kansas. And then I went on to Washburn Law School, and I was able to be a interim practicing lawyer, interning in the Wyandotte County DA's office while he was the judge. And so he seen me at 14, and then he seen me actually practicing in that courthouse. And that was the summer that he passed. But that was the thing that pushed me into law. And he showed me and he told me, if we don't get involved in the criminal justice system and pave the right way for us, who will? And that is why I'm here. And that's why I continue to expose every young person that I can. We're in every school district in our county. We have went over 300 events to schools and bringing students in to shadow, because it was simply about exposing them to what they can do.
Wow. Wow. So this is a great story. So many dimensions to that story. And of course, I'm teary-eyed the whole time, Mark. Great story. I love that. And I love the part, all rise. And that's a metaphor for me of what can happen in the hearts and minds of young people when adults do our responsibility. I mean, just real quick, a quick story for me. Sunday, so we started the year and I've been preaching on the theme of flourishing in all circumstances. I'm not just talking about when things are great, and things are wonderful, but even when you are going through extreme adversity, how we flourish in those times. And a young man that I've never met before, I've never met this young man before. He walks up out the church with his dad, and his dad starts talking. And then when his dad finishes talking, he tells me his name, shakes my hand, and said, "Pastor, I'm so glad you came to St. Mark, and I am going to flourish."
Spencer is his name.
What's his name?
Spencer.
Unbelievable. Mark, is the greatest moment for me. It was the greatest moment in 25 years of ministry. I never felt so lifted and so.
Can I add to that?
Yes, please.
He came to church solely to hear you preach. He's like, put that music aside. I needed the sermon.
Wow. Amazing moment.
You took a picture with him on Facebook, didn't you?
Yeah, I took a picture, man. I had to.
Yeah.
I asked him, I said, man, what? And I said, can I take a picture with you? And I said, can I share it on Facebook? I just got to tell this story about this young man who, you never know when you're just doing what you're supposed to do, when you're doing what you're passionate about, how it is going to cause a rise in some young person the way what happened with Mark. That story, Mark, your story is a paradigm for the African American experience. I think people who don't when we talk political language, they may not get what it means to be Black in America. But when you tell the story of this Black kid who's in the courtroom and feels out of place and doesn't see anybody who looks like him, and what happens in his heart when he hears all rise and he looks up and it's a little Black guy walking in, and that's who they're rising for, and how it changed.
Representation is
Oh my God! Like
so important.
if our brothers and sisters of other colors, ethnicities, and persuasions could hear that story and understand how so many people, many of us as African Americans feel as a part of this story, and how we feel marker like this, how we feel invisible, right? We feel invisible, and how they can help. They can, if as brothers and sisters, how they can help bring us out of that invisibility. So the title of tonight's conversation is facing the rising sun, and I take that, of course, from the National Negro Anthem, and that anthem tells a story. I mean, he talks about the stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod. And then he talks about God of our weary years, God of our silent tears. But then in that first stanza, facing the rising sun of a new day begun. And so I want to start with this question. Do you all, Mark, and Stacey, and Pastor Yolanda, do you all feel like that we are at that point in our journey that we are facing the rising sun? Or are we in a place of weary years and silent tears? Or are we on a stony road, and dealing with chastening rods? Are we at a place where we're facing the rising sun of a new day?
Not all at once. I don't mind jumping in. I think we're at an important inflection point. Like anything in life, where you end up has a lot to do with your attitude. Certainly, the road is stony. I don't think any of us were born, at the foot of a crystal stair, right? But we are at a point where, perhaps for the first time since the first Africans set their souls on this continent, to really do something for ourselves and for our community. African Americans have incredible buying power, for example.
Oh my gosh.
But we spend it on Air Jordans, right? What would happen if we had more financial literacy? What if we gave to each other more sacrificially, the way the judge gave back to Brother Dupree? I was in a youth program. I was volunteering in it when I moved back to Wichita from Kentucky, right? And we would show the kids scenes from the civil rights documentary, Eyes on the Prize. And I'd start off the discussion asking them, what do you think was in the hearts of these people who stood in front of the dogs and the fire hoses and all, but what would possess them? And we'd ask the kids questions. And ultimately, I would share what I thought, which was essentially, these people loved you before they even knew who you were. They were prepared to sacrifice so that you'd have a better life. And I think the inflection point that we're in is very important, to not think of ourselves necessarily as victims, but as victors in control of our destiny. It would be easy to give in to the multi-front attack that we're under now, an attack on our past, an attack on things that we've overcome, even an attack on our ability to vote. There's so much that we could give into, but we can't give in or give up. And I think we're at a point now where we have people who are who have an education, who know how to move things forward. I mean, this should be a very exciting time, despite all the difficulty. But I think this is an important time.
Wow. Great stuff.
Yeah, it's an interesting question about where are we as a people? Is it, into the rising sun, or is it the stony path? And I maybe because I pay too much attention to the Kansas legislature, I sort of see more obstacles than I see hope. And so, but I guess I'm not dissuaded by that. I'm not put off by that. Like you mentioned, what was in the hearts of the people who were facing the dogs. Like I wasn't there, but there are days when I feel like I get it. Like I said, like I'm just aware that there's just been this history of people who have been in the struggle, and this is just my struggle. I'm glad that there are no actual physical dogs. There's no literal fire hoses. But like, for example, last session, when the Ad Astra map, that horribly gerrymandered map of the congressional maps came out, and it passed, and we knew we weren't gonna be able to stop it. Like I had to come home and cry, sat down and cried. And my daughter, who was 11 at the time, was like, "Mommy, why do you do a job that makes you cry?" And I said, "Listen, some fights you have to fight, even when it looks like you're losing, because some things are just worth fighting for." So, I mean, when I see the pictures of Black people back in the 50s, like I said, like, this idea before we were people, that they stood up to the fire hoses or they stood up to the dogs. That, like you said, I totally agree. They were doing that because they didn't know who I was, but they were doing that because they wanted me to be able to get a job, go to school, right? Go to a university, get a job, get an education, do something. And I keep that very clearly in my mind, that I'm doing this for my children, or, this idea that I'm somebody's ancestor, right? Like I'm doing this for me. Yeah. I'd like to think that my life would be better, but being that the history of Black people in this country is the history of Black people in this country, and the forces that are at work against us right now are not going to willingly give us anything. That it's going, our past in this country is going to at least be probably the next little bit of a future in our country. That I'm just like, okay, I'm just. Well, it's a story in Nehemiah about building the wall in front of you. That's what I'm doing. I just want to build the wall that's in front of me, and be a good ancestor to my kids and to the people who are coming after me. Because there were so many people whose names are lost to history. They were good ancestors to me. So I take that pretty seriously. So that's why I can go home and have a good cry, but then the next day come back and go, okay, y'all haven't stopped me yet.
Wow. What a great question. Mommy, why do you have a job that makes you cry?
Mm.
Wow. Okay, y'all trying to make me cry. Every time I ask y'all a question and y'all answer, y'all trying to make me cry. Y'all are trying to make me cry. I'm not doing it. Are you taking the rising sun?
I think we are. I think it's exactly as Stacey just indicated, which is at times it can feel very stony, right? But at the end of the day, we're trying. We're still pushing them. We're still going. We're still making it happen. And for me, why I would say we're facing that sun is because I think about those fire hoses that were on our folks. It's hard for me to even go past the fire hoses, right? If I go past the fire hoses, then we know it's much, much worse. And so I look at simply the fire hoses and Bull Connor and the governors and politicians and the prosecutors who failed to prosecute the over 5,000 lynches that happened to Black folks in this country. And they was the chief law enforcement official, right? The stroke of their pen would say, yes, we are charging the crime. And it never happened. And so when I think about that, And then I look at where we are, where I'm holding a pen now. And not only am I holding a pen, I got a voice. And not only do I have a voice, but I now serve as a bridge to bring other pens and other folks over to be judges and to be DAs and to mentor and to show. And so we're facing some hard stuff, but we're looking at the sun because we see a brighter day, because we're making it happen. And before this world realizes it, we as a people will be in a position that they can't stop us. Right now, they have to hear us, but they still can stop us. But soon, and very soon, I ain't talking about going to see the king. I'm gonna make sure we the king. We the king. I ain't going to heaven to enjoy this. We gonna enjoy this right here, and they gonna know it ain't happening no more. And so I see a change coming. Old Sam Cooke was right. The change is coming, and so I do see that sunshine, and I see that they just can't mute our voices. That they have to let us in the room, and if they don't let us in the room, we know somebody who got some keys who gonna let us in now. And I think that is very important that we stay focused on, and knowing that you have folks across the way over there in politics like Stacey who's doing her part, and then you got folks like Mark who's over there with the ACLU who's touching everything, doing his part. And then you got me actually in the courtroom doing my part. But we all are interconnected, and we're making this continued motion forward, right? Whereas in the past, it was one here, one there, and no. We're in the rooms, and we're making, and it's scaring them. It's scaring them. And who is them? Them are those who are not advocating for what is fair and what is just. Right. Them are those that are not standing for righteousness, whether they're black, brown, yellow, red. It doesn't matter the ethnicity. If they are standing against righteousness, then they are the them, and them will be defeated.
Yes.
That's the offering plate.
Yes. So, oh my God, this is so good. Next question. What are your thoughts on what happened in Memphis? Okay, which kind of and Mark, I think Mark is going to know how I feel about it, because I referred several times with Mark to a book written by Cornel West called Race Matters, and one of the chapters is called The Pitfalls of Racial Reasoning. And what he does in that book is he talks about how if you get locked into race, and that becomes your modus operandi in terms of how you interpret and your logical your form of logic, then what happens when you encounter a Black person? And in this case, he's talking about Clarence Thomas, that he says just the folks who were advocating for justice, Jesse Jackson, that they didn't know what to do when that nomination was first made, because it was like, but he's Black. Mm-hmm. So they got caught in the trap of the pitfall of racial reasoning. And I think it happened to America again, to Black folks again, when that whole issue happened with, I mean, we've gotten some clarity. We've had some folks to give us some clarity about how we should think about that. How are you thinking about what happened there with the African-American police, law enforcement persons were the ones who brutalized and murdered this guy?
Tyre Nichols.
How are you all thinking about that? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, his funeral was today.
Yeah.
I had a lot of thoughts. Race, and this is what so many people are raging against. Like, when Stacey goes to the State House, they're raging against any education that sheds any light on our racial past in this country, because they understand that it's powerful. That one of my heroes, John Heinrich Clark, used to say that it is impossible to continue to oppress a consciously historical people.
Wow.
They will always know.
Say that again, Mark.
The time is right.
Say that. You got to
say it is impossible to continue to oppress a consciously historical people.
Wow.
So my understanding is, and I think this should be everyone's understanding, that race was an organizing factor. It was an organizing principle for the entire culture. And if whether you're protecting those who are in charge, or whether you're being oppressed by those who are in charge, the race doesn't actually matter. But the race of the people did predominate. The reason that that kid was stopped and beaten had everything to do with his race. The reason that those cops were fired so quickly and charged so quickly had everything to do with their race.
Yeah.
Race.
And so, you know, what my mom used to do when something like this happened, she'd watch CNN, and then she said, "I wonder what these crazy people on
On
Fox."
Fox have to say. Well, you have to do it.
And
You
so
gotta do both.
they had some brother on there talking about, well, this isn't about race. You know, I'm not going to fall for that banana in the tailpipe thing again. And what was interesting was they were using that to demonstrate that race wasn't an issue when race resounded in that. You haven't heard from the FOP either,
Right.
and you won't. Black officers in Wichita and elsewhere in this state have told me that the FOP represents white officers, not black officers.
Wow.
FOP being Fraternal Order of
The
Police.
Fraternal Order of the Police Union. And the silence from them on this case has been deafening.
Definitely.
The you know, how casually commentators and people who are being interviewed have used the word savage and unprofessional in reference to the police officers. Those were things they would never say
That's
about
right.
white police officers. In
Right.
fact, I'm old enough to remember when the Rodney King video came out. I was in a newsroom and we were all shocked when those police officers walked.
Mm-hmm.
And they knew what they were doing when they moved the case to Simi Valley. I used to live in that area, but it's basically a cop land, like the movie, where you don't live in the city where you patrol, you live in a bedroom community.
Yeah.
And so that community was full of a bunch of retired cops and their families. So they knew what they were doing when they moved the case there. But the beating of Rodney King to me seemed almost as bad. It's just that he didn't die.
Yeah.
But those are part of my frustration has been not hearing any of these points that I've raised
Right.
in any of the mainstream
That's
media.
right. That's exactly right, Mark.
Nobody is saying it.
Nobody is saying that.
And that was one of the reasons I got into journalism, because I was willing to say those things. And maybe that's why I'm sitting here today out of media, because I was willing to say those things. But those are my thoughts. And I just felt, it's so hard to watch these mothers grieve.
Yeah.
And having kids,
Yeah.
can't imagine.
Yeah.
And we're just so callous in the culture that if we had real value, as Stacey was saying, as people, if there wasn't a value gap like Eddie Glaude talks about in his books,
Yeah.
between white people having a certain value and black people having a certain value, we didn't have that value gap, maybe we could actually move on this issue. But it's just so hard to watch the mothers grieve.
Yeah.
Just so hard.
So hard. Very hard. Very hard. Very. Stacey, Pastor Yolanda, you all jump in.
You know, it is since about 2016, right? It has been very difficult. I have to pick and choose which of these cases I pay attention to. Because if I paid attention to all of them, I remember very clearly. I can't remember. You know, they always say the names, and now there's too many names, and I can't remember. But 2016, for some, like there were so many of them. There was this spate of them, and I remember watching one video where a black man had been stopped, and he was on the video. You could see him walking away, and he was shot in the back.
Yeah,
I think that was Walter Scott.
Okay. And I think the last one that I really paid attention to was probably Breonna Taylor.
Yeah.
And after that, for my own mental stability, I'm like, I almost, and it almost feels bad to admit this, but I have to not pay attention. Like, I was aware of this whole situation. I did not watch the video. I'm like, I can't. I'm not going to watch the video. It's crossed my mind. Should CAC have put out a statement? Should we have said something? But it's like, it's too overwhelming. And I watched, there was something I was watching online today because I knew this question was coming. So I'm like, I should probably know what's going on, what happened today. But someone had talked about how for Black people, it's almost like PTSD. It's traumatic.
It is.
Watching all these, and I get it. I'm like, that's why I stopped watching them a couple years ago. Like, I can't watch another Black person get shot in cold blood. What do I think about how the police have handled it? Again, this video I saw it. I wish I knew who this guy was so I can give proper credit. He said, a train is on a track and a train is going to go a certain way no matter who the conductor is. So the police system in this country is set up a certain way, and it's the police have issues, and the police are going to operate in a certain way. It doesn't matter who the conductor is. So it doesn't matter if the cop is white or Black. There's just a certain amount of biases baked into the system. And that when he said, I'm like, that made sense to me. It is woefully sad, the whole situation that has happened, and I can't imagine what his mother must be going through. And I watched enough of the George Floyd video. I think I probably watched maybe 15 seconds of the George Floyd video. And I was just like, I just can't. So this may be a bad answer, but for my own personal stability, I'm like, I just can't. I couldn't do it.
Yeah. And we are in trauma. The fact of the matter is all of America is in trauma right now from COVID and other stuff. But then Americans, this legacy of trauma that's built into us that, Stacey, I discovered how deeply it's built into me and with unconsciously. And I share this with Mark. When I saw the movie Till.
That's just what I was thinking about.
And my wife literally had to grab me. I started weeping at one point and was shaking. And she said, do we need to leave? And I was like, no, I'll gather myself because I got to stay here and watch it. Went back with the singers, Pastor Yolanda and Phil were there. And Mark wept all over again. And then what I think part of what made it so traumatic the second time was that the singers, there were about, how many, Yolanda? About 30 singers there that day? Mark, that was a particular point in the movie. And they were all weeping in the movie theater. We were the only ones there. You heard all the people crying and people going all over the theater. And so then that was another level because I'm like, wow, like the impact that it was having on it. But that's in us. And I think unconsciously. And so growing up in Mississippi, I had heard stories growing up as a kid. That's what the adults would say. I didn't know who Emmett Till was. I just grew up in this culture where they would say, you better stop doing that. White folks going to come pick you up and throw you in Pearl River or lynch you. And I heard those stories growing up. So then but I never really dug into that story. And then to see it displayed on the screen and to see how it happened and what happened was like all this trauma within me that got released in that. So yeah, so I get it, Stacey. I get it. And you do have to draw a boundary with it, with yourself. You have to know how much you can take because it can overwhelm you. And then that can lead to all kinds of emotional stuff that in ways that trauma gets played out. So great answer. I love your answer. Mark?
So when it all hit, I was traveling to Washington, D.C. for the National District Attorneys Association conference. And so I landed in a place where a whole bunch of district attorneys whose responsibility it was to file these type of charges are gathering from across the country. And so I had some interesting conversations, and that conference is still ongoing this week. When you see this, it always affects you. When you see that it happened, folks who were Black doing this to a Black man, it brings quite a glaring spotlight on the reality that, if you would allow me just for a second to put on my pastor's hat and say that evil don't care your color.
That's right.
And evil will utilize whomever and whatever it can. Now, going back to my attorney side, what did transpire that really made me feel like, okay, well, hopefully we can utilize this moving forward. And many have said it, which is how quick charges came, how quick people were fired, how quick the determination of not putting them on paid leave, how quick the determination to release the video, how quick. Now, listen, we know. Okay, let me change that. There's a theory that says that it was so quick because of the color of the officers. And in fact, one commentator said if it was not African Americans, then the city would be on fire. But because it is, all of this is moving so fast. I think there may be some truth to that. But regardless of whether it's truth or not, I think that what we are getting from this and what I hope we can take away is that this can serve as a template for across the country, regardless of the race of the officer, to say if they did it and got the charges and got the video released and got them fired like that over there in Tennessee, why can't we do it in California? Why can't we do it in Kansas? Why can't we do whatever? So it's my hope that what will come out of this for district attorneys across the country, for chiefs of police and sheriffs across the country, for politicians across the country, is rather than playing this, I'm holding stuff back and I'm not going to accept the reality of what watching and until 6 months down the road. And set that traditional thought process down and say, this is what we can do. Within days, we can release a video. Within days, we can have charges. Within days, they can be fired, and we can move on. And now we can look and see when the next trial or the trial is going to be. And so it did affect me. I didn't like it. But seeing that, hopefully, we get a template out of this is where I found some solace. Because the fact is, and Stacey, you touched this earlier, there are many folks before us that are lost to history. We don't know their names, but they fought in the fight. Listen, we got Facebook and social media and videos and cell phones now, but please believe between the 1980s and today, there were a whole lot of Black and brown folks who were killed at the hands of police, and there wasn't a video or a camera that caught it. And so it's my hope, because it's continuously happening, that we can take away from this, that we can move speedily, even when it involves law enforcement, despite, right, Mr. McCormick, what an FOP may or may not say or do.
Wow. Pastor Yolanda, you want to comment?
You know, since May 25th, 2020, I can give you that date because it was my mother's birthday. And I was mourning her death when I got notice about George Floyd. And I hate to reduce this to a slogan, but I can't keep calm because I gave birth to Black sons.
Yeah.
So as I look at another Black man being beaten while screaming for his mother, I'm just so broken. And it was difficult to go to work. It's difficult to see that people are still, of course, the world cannot stop, but I totally believe, and you've heard me say this at funerals, that there's that African adage that a person lives on if you know this. So I had to know his name. So I spent the day at work watching his service and hearing stories about him that were positive. But I couldn't help but weep. And for a moment, I felt myself being hopeless. And I had to go to the word. And Psalms 71:14 says, "As for me, I will always have hope," which means that there's work to be done, that we all have to take this personally. It's not just that's what happened in Memphis, or that's what happened in Minneapolis, or that's what happened in Kansas City. And I'm saying Black, white, Asian, Guadalajara, people alike all have to take this personally. A man, the fact that he was a Black man is something in and of itself, but a man was brutally murdered. And I know it takes the law to actually deem it murder, but I'm going by what I think I saw with my own two eyes. His life was taken. And until we all decide to be accountable in every household across this country, that every life matters, our hope is in danger. And that's my fear. When we get to the point to where we're anesthetized to it, to where it's just another person on the screen, it's just another news story, or we pay more attention to the fact, I'm not even focusing on the fact that it's 5 Black men and 1 Caucasian officer who tased him. I'm focusing on the fact that another man was screaming for his mother while being beaten, and it hurts.
Absolutely. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. You know, we've got to, so I share your concern. I've watched in our country, so the war in the Ukraine started, and very early in that war, you started hearing stories. That was a story that hit me so hard. Like I couldn't, I'm like, how do I move on from that? But then I looked around and everybody, they printed this, they wrote the story, printed, and everyone moved on. That a bomb was dropped on a school
Hmm.
and hundreds of kids were killed.
Children,
Children,
but
and
that's those children over
and
there.
the world moved on. The world, everybody, and then we have these mass shootings now happening. Looks like almost every other day there's another, and we move right on. That, and so I'm beginning to wonder, Pastor, what is that saying about this? So we're talking about the status of Black people in America. What does that say about the status of American spirits, of people's hearts? That we become anesthetized and numb to that kind of tragedy and pain, and where is that going to lead to? Where is that going to lead to? And I think that's something all of us as believers really need to plug into. Those who have prophetic insight, whether you're in the church or outside the church, whatever, you don't have to be inside the church to have discernment of the time, to read the signs of the times and understand that there's something unique going on. But I think we really need to pay attention to that. I wanted to ask you all a question about what's going on with, and the big name right now, the big story right now is DeSantis in Florida and his attempt to block, and in the name of that it's you know, it's pushing a political agenda, but as a part of excluding this course, you're also excluding the teaching of Black history as a part of the American story. And that's happening. Texas did it for Texas. Texas was the first state to really push that, and it's happening and spreading. They tried to do it in Kansas. Stacey knows, Mark knows that we took a great stance against the last legislative session, and they backed off. But it's coming back. Make no mistake about it. But we did a Teach the Truth campaign. But Mark, so that restate your, because if you restate that, and I want to move on to one other thing, because it's 8:20, and I want to leave on a high note of inspiration and not get lost in. But Mark, restate that statement about a people.
Oh yeah, it is impossible to continue to oppress a consciously historical people.
It's a great statement.
John Heinrich Clark.
Amazing statement. So one of my stories that I like to use to as a model for that, Mark, is how many Black people don't understand. So they may have heard about the Tulsa riots. They may have heard it, and oh, that's horrible. But they don't. But the full story, because what literally happened there is that Black people, the Emancipation Proclamation happens in 1856, and in less than 50 years, with nothing, no government programs, no 3 acre on a mule or whatever, Black folk, nothing. They built Black Wall Street in less than 50 years, basically from scratch. And so if you don't know that story, you will start to believe the narrative that Black folks, all they want is a handout. Oh, nothing makes me angry. Like, I don't care what political persuasion people choose, but for somebody to say, "Well, I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative because I don't believe that Black people should get a handout," and I'm like, "Are you out your mind?" I add another word between your and mine, Mark, that I'm not gonna say it on here because Ron Holt might be watching. None of my church leaders but I'm like, are you out of your mind? So obviously you don't. What Mark did, the quote, John Henry Clark, you don't know who you are. You don't know your history and it wasn't just Tulsa. Oh, over 200 communities across this country, Black folks took nothing and built thriving Black communities.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again, that oftentimes I think there's two other things going on. One, I don't think that they don't want to teach Black history. I don't think they want to teach their own history.
True
is one thing that I want to toss out there.
That.
Because if they teach the full story of the Tulsa race riots, that means they have to teach what the white people did.
Right.
If they teach the full history of Black people, at some point someone's going to go, well, why did the white people stop all this? Like, or why did the white people do redlining? Or why did the white people not give the GI Bill to Black people? So it's not, there's a strong sense in me that it's not that they don't want to teach Black history, is that they don't want to teach their own history.
It's not just that, Stacey.
That's great point.
It's not just what certain people did. What's particularly damning is what people did not do.
Right.
And that's the masses of people who watched it happen.
Wow.
That would be much harder to live with.
And I think
you can always other the people who are the them, right, Brother Dupree? There's always going to be a them. But that's not me.
Yeah.
But the me is you watched it and didn't do anything.
And so
you can say that we would be all
anything.
People who were silent, more so than the people who committed these atrocities against us. I think you're on to something there, but it's also about the people who were the passive people who allowed the outright racists to rule the day.
That's right.
Well, I mean, but there's so many of those stories that means that there's a lot of past. I mean, I think it implicates a whole lot of white people if you really tell the history of the country. So that's one thing. And two, and I've also said this, is that I strongly believe that there's a certain element of flavor of the week with who they're attacking, that it's like, because I know last year, Pastor Johnson, you know this, because I listened to the Holy Post. And so I know last year at one point, the evangelicals were like, the biggest threat to the gospel in America this day and age is critical race theory. They were just like, critical race theory is the biggest threat to the gospel. But now what they have decided, the biggest threat to the gospel, they're done with Black people. Like, Black people aren't the biggest threat. The biggest threat is what you think about gender issues, right?
Excellent observation.
So I feel like I missed the joke. Like, it's
you're speaking so much truth that it is hilarious that it is. They don't realize that it is that clear to us, and so many of them have bought into this foolishness. But it's a joke. But please continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, so the biggest threat is now gender issues. So I think there's an element of just flavor of the week. What's the next thing that we're gonna put up against, for the far right to just be scared about, right? And so and it's just an attack on public schools. Like, it's just an attack on public schools, They don't want to fund public schools because they think public schools are indoctrinating their children in evolution, right? Like it's just the next thing that they're throwing. And because the MAGA thing happened, Donald Trump got people so scared of Black people that it's just an easy thing to throw. But I think it's just, of course, it also goes back to white supremacy anyway, because one of the things they also want to do with the schools is not have, if you go back historically, it's like they don't want to have Black people like Bob Jones, right? It's like, no, like, so it's like, if you don't let us run the schools the way we want to run them, we'll just attack public schools no matter what. I mean, I know in Kansas, they're still trying to do the vouchers to get public money to go to private schools or homeschools. Like, I'm like, listen, I used to homeschool my children. I homeschooled my children from kindergarten until the year 2020, and I only stopped because I was running for office. I homeschooled my children, but I always supported public school because I understand that it is a needed thing in our society to have a public school system. So it's hard when they're attacking us. And DeSantis, it just seems like it's just a dog whistle. It's just a dog whistle because he wants to run for president. Like, I don't even know if he takes it seriously.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. Wow. Great response. I want to close with this and ask you all this question. And so this is the first day of Black History Month. I used to, at one point in my life journey as a human being, as an American, I started saying, we don't need Black History Month anymore. Black history should be taught all the time, that kind of, and now I know, no, we need Black history. I'm like, no, we need Black History Month. We need Black History Month more than ever before. Thank you, Tab. Thank you for watching again. That's my niece in Mississippi who watches every Wednesday night and loves our broadcast, but I know she has loved this conversation tonight. But I'd like for you all, and Pastor Yolanda, you as well, let's close with this. If you could get Black folks this month, if you get Americans this month, not just Black Americans, period, to look at the life of one African American who greatly influenced you, and you think that their story is critical to the American story, who would you pick? Who's most influential for you? Who has influenced you most in terms of historical figures, African American?
My father.
Wow.
And it was a hard decision between my mother and my father, because both of them overcame quite a bit of adversities throughout life, and still pushed through. But what affected me so much about my father, who never went to college, who never had a degree, went off, fought in Vietnam, came back, married my mother, and had 6 kids, and then took in 3 more kids from the church, and pastored and worked a full-time job, and I oftentimes didn't have money enough to pay the bills, didn't have a running car. I recall being young and him riding a bicycle in the winter from Kansas City, Kansas to Kansas City, Missouri to go to work. And what he showed me was, son, regardless of what you think about yourself and what you think about a job, whether it's above you, beneath you, or what, you have to take care of your family. And in order to do that, you have to have faith, but you have to work. And so I can go on and on about what he did, but he showed me. He didn't just tell me about God. He didn't just tell me about service. He didn't just tell me about taking care of people. My entire life, he showed me and all of my siblings by example, and then making us serve. Right? I can't remember the first time I actually started getting paid to clean up and to go and change a transmission and an alternator, and got some money for it. I thought this was just what we do as pastor kids. We fixed everybody's cars. We cleaned out everybody's house. And so I digress. But the point is, my father showed me by example what it means to be a servant leader and to survive and thrive as a Black man in this country while still having dignity, respect, and the love for God.
Wow. Wow.
And I'm gonna have to stop going after Dupree.
I had to testify in a hearing after him earlier this week, and I was like, they called my name, and I was like,
show here tonight, and you just come out and do the show.
What I want to know is, will his church allow him to pull away from home and come preach elsewhere on Sunday morning? But we won't I'm not going to put him on the spot, Yolanda. But he's kind of. I'm putting him on the spot, but we just.
Hey, listen, I'm scared of Wichita. Listen, I can't get up there with you. You put it on. I get up there and they fool around and boo me off.
No way. No way. But I do want to talk to you about that offline, sir, please.
By all means. The pleasure would be mine.
Wow. Mark?
Well, I don't want to go after Pastor Young, so I'm gonna go ahead and go now.
Let me mute myself.
So no, really. I've mentioned him already. I thought about this a lot, and it's the historian John Heinrich Clarke. And I actually brought another quote of his with me tonight.
Please.
And it was something that I had shared with you in one of our phone calls in the last couple of weeks. But he said, we cannot ask the people who have programmed us into oblivion to program us out of it. Education has but one honorable purpose, one alone. Everything else is nonsense. That is to train the student to be a respectful and responsible handler of power. People do not train you how to take power away from them when they hold power over you by controlling you.
Wow.
He was just very clear on this issue in ways that people are not today. He's been gone a while.
Wow.
He was unapologetically Black.
Wasn't there a movie made about him with Wesley Snipes? Is that?
I don't know. If there is one, I'm going to find it.
What a profound quote that steeps into Yolanda some conversations we've been having about part of what it means to be human is to be healthy human, to be an authentic human being is learning to share power. And then the question, what do you do with power? And to connect that with the process of education and understanding that those who have power over you are not going to educate you into power. Oh my God. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so deal with that, Stacey and Pastor Yoke.
I can handle going after you. I can't handle talking after Dupree. Dupree preaches no matter what. So, I think I have two answers. The first, my first answer was going to be Michelle Obama or Barack Obama, because I just feel like they were such. But history will record them. But I still, it was very deeply impactful for me to see a Black man be elected president of the United States. I remember when McCain conceded, I said out loud, like, I did not see that coming. Like I was, even though like it looked like he was going to win, I just didn't believe it was going to happen. So to have that happen and to see how they conducted themselves and to see how they carried themselves and how they have continued to carry themselves as the world has gone crazy has floored me. But then I too, a person in my family is my two great grandfather. His name was Isaac Franklin Bradley Sr. And he was born enslaved. And Mark knows this story because I think he read the book my mom wrote. Born enslaved in Missouri and was freed and made his way up to Lawrence, Kansas by way of in Missouri, and then came into Lawrence, Kansas. And so he walked, right, made his way. There was no light rail. And became the first Black man to graduate from KU School of Law and became a judge and a lawyer in Wyandotte County.
Wow.
And so when you think about this was in the early 1900s. And so my mom has even tracked down a picture of his son, who was I.F. Bradley Jr., who also became a lawyer in Wyandotte County, holding protest signs. So I take it, it's just very clear to me that I am just a part of this movement of history to try to continue to help our people move forward just one step at a time. My great-great-grandfather was a part of the Niagara movement, who was a forerunner of the NAACP. So, just this knowing the history, knowing the stories, knowing the names of the people who worked hard to make our lives where they are now, and just being determined to not let their work be in vain. So I think, and then my mom's awesome. So I'm like, I think everyone needs to meet my mom. She even my daughter the other day, we went bowling for my 14-year-old birthday, and mom was bowling, and of course she beat everybody. And then and then like she's a breast cancer survivor, and when she was going through treatment, she's like, listen, I've got to be well in order to play ping pong on the 4th of July. And they were like, are you a good ping pong player? And she was like, yeah. And she is. Like, my mom, I'm gonna say wonderful things about my mom, but I'm also gonna throw her under the bus, because she will hustle you on ping pong. Like, she will be, I've seen her do it. We've gone to vacation, and she's older. She's in her 70s. She's very unassuming, and she'll walk up to a ping pong table and be like, oh, can I play? And I'll be sitting back being like, don't do it. Some college age kids, and they'll be like, sure, lady. And she'll be like, okay, I'll just wait. And she'll just kind of walk over and sit down, and then she'll stand up and like,
and then kill it.
Like, so my 14-year-old's like, grandma's just good at everything. I'm like, I know.
Jack of all trades. Yes.
She's just good at everything, my mom. So everyone needs to know my mom.
Listen, I know your mama, and she the bomb. And yes, her book is sitting on my desk in my office. It is a great book, and your family is amazing. Mark, I need your book so it too can sit on my desk. But that history, her great-great-grandfather being that first Black lawyer and doing what he did in Wyandotte County. Now, here, catch this. So Judge Meeks, his father was the first Black district court judge for the state of Kansas. And then it was Meeks' mentorship to me that makes me the first Black DA for the state of Kansas. And going all the way back to Stacey's great-great-grandfather, all of this Blackness and educatedness came in Wyandotte County. All right, I'm done now. I'm just saying the doctor's on the
I grew up listening to stories about Cordell Meeks. So, like, when you said that Cordell Meeks, I'm like, oh, I've heard about Cordell Meeks, because I grew up, I heard about Cordell Meeks all the time. So, yeah, the dot in the house.
Yes. All right, I'm done.
I'm done.
Pastor Yolanda?
Stacey stole my thunder. First and foremost, I would say my mother, just because she gave me the rest if you must, but don't quit mentality, that you need to just keep on and keep pressing forward. And I loved her while she was alive, but I didn't appreciate her until she was gone. I didn't understand that what she was trying to instill in me in such a harsh way was for my own good. And I think that if more people had a Lois in their life, we'd have more productive citizens. That's one. But I've really taken on to loving Ida B. Wells. Anyone who can organize Black women, okay, deserves an award all on their own. But I mean, establishing the first kindergarten, her work with the NAACP.
Journalist?
Yes, definitely a journalist, but also, she helped to get the first Black alderman elected. So I think she paved the way for each and every one of you on this panel and so many more. I think it established the road for Black politicians, so forth and so on. But I just really love her work with the women's suffrage, and I really appreciate the fact that she started within our own group first. It was important to her to make sure that Black women got their stuff together, and I ascribe to do the same.
And she was the one who led the way on the anti-lynching movement.
Anti-lynching, yes,
which was huge. Like,
I was going to mention that too, especially, but in this moment, I would have cried.
Hey, the truth be told, every time there was a major shift in the African American story, women led it. I just got to say that now.
So why do y'all give us such a hard time? Just let us move out the way and let us do our job.
because we want to do something. We want to make it. We want to be the linchpin at some point. We let us give us an opportunity to
Well, I want the record to show that when I came on today, I said Stacey was my boss.
Now, you did say that. Now, I want you to know Osama bin Laden would have been found 10 years ahead of time. Okay? We would have saved y'all money. All you have to do is let us go ahead and do what we need to do. We'll give y'all credit.
Hey, I've got to get, and we've got to go. I've got to get mine in, though. I've got to get, and you all already know. I mean, hey, there it is for me.
Oh, yeah.
There it is for me. And she is everything. She's like she in Harriet Tubman converged all the greatness of African Americans, of what it means to be human. She's a prayer warrior. So it's almost like Mark. She's Kojic. She's Baptist. She's because she was a prayer warrior. She's a strategic thinker. She was the first Christian deconstructionist because she sat in those little churches where they were telling her slaves be silent, and she sat there and listened and said, "All right, whatever." And then in her mind, she's calculating that how she's gonna steal some slaves that night. And then after she was a spy for the Northern Army.
Yeah.
She led the first armed rebellion. A woman that freed over 700 slaves.
A little woman,
little tiny woman.
Who was given the fainting spells.
Just an amazing story. So
thanks be to God.
Man, she is just Harriet. Like if I could have just stood in her presence.
Don't they have her shawl at the Smithsonian in Washington?
I did not know that. What?
Yeah. Her shawl is on display.
If it takes missing, Yolanda stole it. Put that out there. If y'all find it in my house, I didn't have anything to do with it. Yolanda got it and gave it to me, told me she bought it somewhere. So I just want to put that out there. I did not know that, Mark. And I've been to the museum, but that place is so huge, you miss stuff, because I've been to that place multiple times and I did not know that. I've missed it. Wow. But I got to get on, and my mom will be on next week. My mom and dad, of course, as you all say as well. My dad who passed, and my mom gave me my wings. My dad was my roots. So my mom was the one who saw all of my possibilities and promise, Mark. But my dad was the one to say, yeah, he's got possibility and promise enough to get him in trouble. So he needs to learn how to work. He needs to start telling the truth. So my dad was my root. So he was not impressed with all the great grades and all that stuff and speeches. He was like, I need him to learn how to be a decent human being. So I'd say my dad was my roots. My mom was my wings. Can't wait to have my mom on next week. Mark, and Stacey, Pastor Yolanda, y'all were absolutely awesome. I have had more fun in this conversation. This last week was so powerful with Dr. Cynthia Wilson talking about music. Yeah. But tonight is just off the chain. Thank you all so much. I don't know. I don't want to put y'all on the spot, but if it's possible, maybe we could come back together before the month is over. I know Mom's next week, but I'll send out something to you all offline. All of y'all that are watching tonight, thank you for tuning in.
Hey, can I do a quick commercial?
Yes. Let's go back. Yes, thank you, Stacey, for the.
And I see that she dropped it in the chat. So there is a Black Legislative Day at the Capitol coming up on Tuesday, February 14th. So it's Valentine's Day. You will be done. It's from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. So you will be done in time to get home to have dinner with your boo. But it will be not quite a full day, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. I just also dropped a registration link, so maybe you can get that in there. Or if you go to any of my social medias, I'm promoting it on social media, and the Community Voice is promoting it. We will have different people coming up talking about different bills that are going through, different issues that are going to be important to the Black community. Mark Dupree is our featured speaker. He will be talking about whatever he wants to talk about. Or if you just want to end it with a sermon, Mark, you got 20 minutes. I will let you just do whatever you want to do. But we will be covering lots of issues from policing or C-Post or the medical marijuana, all kinds of predatory lending, just a lot of different issues that are impacting our community. So please come out to all CAC social medias and find out about it. Black Legislative Day at the Capitol. It is please, just everyone come. Just come, learn. If you've never been to the Capitol, it's a beautiful building. You can learn a lot about different topics and how to get involved. There we go.
Y'all please come out. We've got to get involved. And I will tell you, as a past person who manages power in the local church, when I know folks aren't going to show up to vote for something, oh my God. Like, that's a field day when you're trying to I'm just being honest, when you're trying to push something and you can count on certain people not showing up to vote and to voice their concern, how much power that gives you. And so we've got to be engaged and so folks will know we are aware, and that will change even how the conversation goes. Mark, come back and let's make your announcement again as well.
Again, we're going to be fighting to dismantle the death penalty here in Kansas, Monday, February 6th, 9 a.m. at the Sedgwick County Courthouse. Please join us.
Absolutely. And then, Pastor Yolanda, we would want everyone to know in the Wichita community, we're celebrating seniors on Sunday. And not just St. Mark's seniors, but any seniors in the city. We just want to love on seniors. Maybe it's because I'm aging, I'm 56. I don't know if that's it, or just that God has opened my heart to understand. But I think we do very good at telling people how they need to grow up, but we don't prepare people to grow old. And then we don't prepare ourselves to care for people as they age. But I want to love on our seniors and so we'll do that. Hopefully, Brother Ted Holt, who used to be a vital part of music ministry at St. Mark, hasn't sung in a while, but hopefully he will feel well enough that he's going to lead a song on Sunday, and we're just gonna love on seniors and celebrate their commitments, their sacrifices, and the contributions they made to us, and then love on them a little bit. So that's on Sunday. So St. Mark, we look forward to having you out. Am I missing anything else, Pastor Yolanda?
Other than the fact that your mother just mentioned that your father brought you a brand new shiny trombone, I know that I could not let that pass, because my brother Kai Green would have had a whole spill after reading this.
Kai, Mark's laughing because he's heard Kai make fun of me that I played the trombone. That's because Kai doesn't know anything about band and music. That's it. I don't tell him. He doesn't understand how. But yeah, my dad did that. Well, so part of that whole story is that as I became more what my dad wanted to see in me, that he started investing in that potential that my mom embraced so early. And so I had a trombone, wanted a Bach trombone. I don't know if y'all, but that's a little fancier trombone, has the tubes in it. And it was $1,000. And my dad said, no. But then one day I came home from school. He says, get in the truck. We're going to go over here and get this trombone. And now I got a lecture all the way over and all the way back home. And I'll close with this story. I'll close with this story. Part of the lecture was take some initiative. The stuff that I've told you to do it without me having to tell you to do it. So we get home, Mark, and I go straight to the room with the trombone and pull it out and start playing. And he comes back and he says, this is what I'm talking about right here. He said, you haven't taken the trash out. You haven't done. He said, I just got through talking to you about this. I just got through talking to you. Put that horn down. I'm going to take it back to Hattiesburg. So great way to end the night. Love you guys. Thank you all for watching tonight. We'll be back next Wednesday. Mark, and Stacey, y'all are absolutely wonderful. God bless you all. Let us know if St. Mark can support you all in any way, in addition to the ways we're already trying to be supported. Good night.